Christ, the love of God, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you all. Amen. Please be seated. As many of you know, yesterday marked my 5-year anniversary here at Redeemer from the time I was installed. And in some ways, I can't really believe it's been 5 years, right? In other ways, I can't believe it's only been 5 years. And it's just how it is, right? And when Holly and I first heard we were coming here, we had no idea, right, where it was, no idea what was awaiting us, no idea we would be plugged into this wonderful community of faith that we give thanks for routinely. And it's not just kind of like, a lot's happened here in this congregation in 5 years. A lot's happened in our lives in 5 years. Some wonderful, some heartbreaking, right? Some right in the middle of that. From welcoming both of our sons to losing our daughter in the womb, to walking in on a burglary, right? Taking place in the middle of the day. A lot of things have happened in the last 5 years. And even in this place, right? Our relationships individually have grown and developed over time. And with some folks, it was, easy from the start, and it's been easy ever since. And for other folks, we've tussled back and forth a little bit, and that's okay, right? That's part of what it means to be part of a congregation. It doesn't mean we always get along, or always agree, or are always on the same page. It means that we've been brought together by the will of God Himself to receive from Him the gifts He has to give. As long as that's taking place, right, the rest of it we can work out with fear and trembling, right? The rest of it we can sort of deal with. Not as people who are unregenerate, but as those whose default position when they come together, having wounded one another, been offended by one another, our default position is to speak words of forgiveness rather than demanding apologies, because that is who we have been redeemed to be in Christ. Life as a congregation can be wonderful, but it's work, isn't it? It's not always easy work, but it's okay, because it's going to take work to maintain the unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace. And sometimes it brings a smile to our face, and sometimes it brings tears or angst or anxiety. Especially when there are transitions, right? Major transitions, or when leaders are preparing to leave. Now, I'm not preparing to leave. Just get that out. But our second reading today is from the book of Acts, and Paul is getting ready to do just that. You may remember Acts is the second book written by Luke. A lot of people smarter than I believe that Luke and Acts are really kind of one book, and you should read them that way. That it's one great, grand story of Christ and what He came to do, and the church He left on earth after He ascended into heaven. And specifically, right, the life and ministry of this guy named Paul in the second half of the book of Acts. We know that Paul started out as this guy named Saul, right? This Pharisee among Pharisees who went out and persecuted the church, right? He had the death letter in his hand, and he could execute that with reckless abandon. Nobody could hold him accountable for it. Nobody, of course, except the one who knocked him off his high horse, Jesus Christ, who takes this persecutor of the church named Saul and turns him into this great missionary and author of a good chunk of the New Testament that we know as Paul. And a lot of Acts, like I said, is understanding where Paul was going and what he was doing. And our text today, Paul is giving a farewell discourse. He's brought the elders of the Ephesian church to him, and he says, guys, I have to go to Jerusalem. I don't know what's waiting me there, but the Spirit is compelling me to do it, and I know I'm not going to see your faces again. And he recounts some of the things he did among them, right? And then our text chimes in, and he talks about how he preached the full counsel of God, that he did not shrink from it when he was among the church in Ephesus. But night and day he would toil with tears, right, to teach people who Christ is and what that means for them. And continuing on a little bit, telling a little more about the work and the effort he put in, right? He closes his little speech commending the church to Christ. And why does he do this? because after he leaves, he knows that fierce or ravenous wolves are going to come in. And they're going to attack. They're going to go after the flock that has been entrusted to these elders that Paul is addressing. And so he is preparing them for that. Not only the ones that are going to come from outside, but the ones that are going to rise up from within your midst, who are going to seek to draw away disciples. Get ready for it, guys. It's coming. So he commends them to Christ. And then they have this sort of really tearful and emotional goodbye as they bring him to the ship. They have this moment where they know and they are saddened by the fact that Paul has said he's not going to see him again face to face. And we know, right, we know who can read the rest of the book of Acts. We know how this kind of ends for Paul. We know he doesn't die in the end of the book of Acts. We know he is put to death, and sure enough, he doesn't see these people again. And sure enough, fierce wolves always come to attack the church. Now, the words that Paul speaks to these elders, they are typically used at ordinations and installations of pastors in our Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. They were read at both of mine, if I'm not mistaken. And you can see why, right? This sort of reality that exists, that there are going to be those who come and attack the church from outside, and there are going to be issues that rise up within, so you've got to be on your guard. And you sort of, Paul is sort of set up, right, as this wonderful example to follow in this regard. But see, the reason why Paul can be this wonderful example for anyone, not just pastors, not just those of us who wear the stole, but anyone who ministers in a congregation, the reason why Paul can be such a role model is because he's following in someone else's footsteps. Someone who already set the model down before us. Someone who knew he had to go to Jerusalem, but unlike Paul, knew exactly what was going to happen when he got there. Jesus the Christ, the one who goes to Jerusalem in order to die and rise again. The one who in our gospel text does like Paul does, or I should say Paul does like Jesus does. Warning people about false prophets, ravenous wolves, those who are going to come in and disrupt things, who are going to try to lead you away, but you're going to be able to see them by the fruits of their labor. And in the case of Jesus, he means by what they teach concerning him. He says that. Christ is the ultimate example of what it means to care for those entrusted to you. And that's why Paul's example is one we can follow, because he's just following Jesus. And that's that Jesus, the one who comes to live and die and rise again, the one who goes to Jerusalem knowing what is going to happen, he is the one to whom Paul commends the church. The one who buys the church with his very blood. The one who sustained the church when Paul was with them and will continue to sustain the church long after Paul has departed. This Jesus is not like an afterthought for Paul. He's the whole kit and caboodle. The entire cake. He is the main thing. And that's a reminder we all kind of need every now and again, right? Because if we're honest, some of the reasons why we come together as a congregation have nothing to do with Jesus a lot of the time. It's, I like the style of the worship, or I have friends here, or I feel welcomed here. And I'm not saying those things are bad in and of themselves. But that's not why you should attend here or anywhere. That's not why you should be part of a congregation here or anywhere. No, the main thing is always Christ and Him crucified. The rest of the stuff we can work out and disagree on and whatever you want to do. But the main thing is Christ. And that's the one thing that can't be compromised. That's the point where you know you should leave a congregation. If they stop teaching Christ and Him crucified for you. Because that's the main thing. Christ is the main thing. He is the one to whom Paul commends the church, warning them that they're going to be attacked from outside and inside, but it's okay, guys, because you have the Christ. And maybe put a better way, the Christ has you. Jesus is the one to whom Paul commends his hearers. Jesus is the one to whom you and I are commended in the waters of our baptism. The one to whom you and I are commended every time we hear the word read or preached. The one to whom we are commended when we feed on His very body and blood. And it's Him and His voice that we need. Because false prophets are everywhere. They were there in the Old Testament. I mean, we don't need to go through everything going on in that Jeremiah passage to understand that there were people speaking things they shouldn't have been speaking. Claiming, right, that they had something to say from God, only it wasn't worth listening to. And indeed, in the Gospels in Jesus' day, right, there are false prophets among them. There are those in Paul's day who are false prophets, these false teachers who take the gospel and turn it into a law. And nowadays is no different. There are those who would take what Christ has done and what Christ gives to you and put it on a shelf and then tell you what you should be doing and how you should be living. And turn the focus away from Christ and His gifts onto you. And that's a problem. It's a problem because the main thing is not you, me. It's Christ. His work, His love, His death and resurrection. Given to you, given for you, yes. But you are not the starting point. I am not the starting point. He is. He's the one who comes, lives, dies, and rises again, who goes to Jerusalem knowing what is going to happen. The one who sustained the church in the darkest of hours and who will sustain the church in the dark hours to come. The one who has cared for this congregation long before I ever showed up and will continue to care for it long after I leave. Because this congregation is part of Him. It's not the walls. It's not the pews. It's not the stained glass that keeps us together. It's not the way we organize ourselves. It's not the way we do fellowship or any of these other things. It's Christ and His gifts. It's Christ and His life given for you. He is the one to whom Paul commends the elders, the church of Ephesus. Christ is the one to whom you and I are continually commended. Because He is the main thing. The one who has died, the one who has risen, the one who will come again.